Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Whippin' Chat.
Woohoo!
Becky's here with me, and it's late at night, but we wanted to do this. It's going to be kind of a serious talk, and hopefully it's going to be shorter than last night's was.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it short.
And it's not going to have as many squirrels.
If you listen to the last video we did, you are amazing because, yeah, that was a long video with a lot of squirrels and, yeah, you're pretty awesome for listening to it.
But we rehearsed tonight, so it's not going to have as many squirrels in it. Hopefully.
We'll see.
So, as we mentioned last night, Becky and I have individually, in our own relationships, made the decision with her husband, and myself with my future spouse, whoever that may be, to not have children. And we want to share with you why that is and our reasoning behind that. So I will let Becky start.
Okay, so it wasn't until 2015. I'm 34, soon to be 35. And I didn't start getting treatment for bipolar disorder until 2015. I had a long, several years struggle with depression, and I was always diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and so I was treated for that without medication. I grew up in an area or surrounded by people who felt like it's got to go the natural way. You got to treat it. Like medication was bad. And, whoops. I got a bunch of wax. Oh, I think I dipped it twice. Whoops.
It's okay.
There you go. Squirrel number one. So anyways, long story short, I was my recent doctor when I asked him about, having kids. He recommended that we don't because I'd have to be off my medication. And for those who aren't really familiar with what bipolar disorder is your moods swing high. You swing high and you swing low, and it's in the extreme. Everybody experiences the same emotions.
Everybody has ups and downs.
Yeah.
But think of it as a roller coaster. You have the ups and downs, and then you have the high peaks and the low valleys.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're really fast, and sometimes they last for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can never predict how long you're going to be in the peak or the valley.
Yeah. And so it's not just depression like my that many people know, where it's triggered by job loss or somebody, a death of a loved one, those types of things it's just not the same type of depression, because the kind of depression that somebody with bipolar disorder has, or major depressive disorder, is you go so far as to think about death and then, commit suicide. And I have attempted multiple times myself. So you think about that, you think about I finally found a really strong, healthy stability when I started getting treatment, like the right medication, and then regular therapy. And so if I were to get pregnant or try to get pregnant, I'd have to be off my medication to even try to get pregnant, and then off of my medication while I am pregnant. And then my doctor said, in his own words, that after I would have my baby, the postpartum that I will experience would be far more severe than those who are otherwise, healthy, have a healthy brain. And I would pretty much be a vegetable for the first 3 months of my baby's life. And my husband would be more or less a single dad. and taking care of the baby. And so it's just not a pretty picture. Not a pretty picture. It's not worth the gamble, because when you have a baby, when you're pregnant, it's a lifelong decision. So, anyways, I may add more, but you go, because I feel like I'm talking a lot.
That's okay. I first started I've always wanted to be a mother. It's something I've wanted since I was a small child. I used to play house with my siblings. They were the children, I was the mother. But I really started reconsidering it. Let me back up. I was diagnosed bipolar in 2007, but I didn't start receiving steady treatment until 2010. And it has taken until 2018 to get on a steady med regimen where I'm not being hospitalized every 6 months. And I'm super sensitive to medication changes. So for me, the slightest change can trigger a manic episode or a depression episode. And for me, my depression can last months. And it can be triggered by something as simple as the weather's a big thing for me, but I've had it as simple as spilling something. I spill something I shouldn't have, and I start to cry, and it just goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. But, back on topic. Sorry, squirrel number 2. I really started reconsidering my thoughts on having a child when I was in the hospital one time. And there was a girl there who was 8.5 months pregnant. And the one night at 4 a.m, she was doing cartwheels down the hallway. Any of you who have ever been overweight or been pregnant know that unless you're in good shape, it is almost impossible to do a cartwheel.
Mm-hmm.
And she was doing them. Stomach and all. Baby and all. And then they took her over to the hospital to have her baby because we were on a locked unit for our own safety. And they brought her back after she'd had the child. And most of the time, she didn't even know she'd had a child. The time she did know she'd had a child, she was crying for it because she hadn't been allowed to see it for its own safety. And that really made me think, because I have been hospitalized numerous times, probably close to 30 in the last 9 years. And if I were to go off my meds, I know I'd end up in the hospital. So I would be hospitalized my entire pregnancy, which means they would take away my child when it was born. I wouldn't be allowed to see it. And I would still be in the hospital, and I would not know what happened to it. If I was lucky, the baby's father would take it. Now we're assuming I'm married, because I don't believe in sex outside of marriage. But there's always the off chance that you have a child outside of marriage.
Especially when you're manic and you're not married. Or sometimes
when you're manic, you don't always do the smartest decisions.
See, I had manic symptoms for all of my teenage years. I had one therapist when I was 17 who felt strongly that I had bipolar disorder. But back at that time, that was like, you're bipolar, you're crazy. And I didn't want to be labeled as crazy. Right. So, no, I am not. Let's just focus. I told her, let's just focus on the depression.
Right.
And then all the other therapists felt, because for the most part, I had anxiety and depression. And that's what my family doctor and my therapist always wrote down: depression and anxiety. And um and so it took a severe mental breakdown, then moving and a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, I just don't want to go through all that I've been through. I'm allergic to most medications, so finding the only two, well, now three, that have worked. I mean, it just hasn't been easy to find medication that works for me. And so if I had to get off medication, go through all the hormonal changes with my pregnancy, and then try to get on get on medication again, there's no guarantee that the medication I was on before would work the same. And if it doesn't, I'm SOL because I'm very limited with with my medication options. And I just don't want to be as severely depressed as I was. I haven't had thoughts of death since I first started getting treatment when the medicine started to kick in. I don't want to go there again. And what's difficult, I don't know if you've experienced it as much as I have, but what's difficult is when people say, "Oh, you can get pregnant, you can do it. We'll all be here for you." It's like, "Oh my gosh, you don't even know." You're not in my head, and I have to remind them that sometimes. I'm like, until you've experienced being inside a mind that is taking control of
correctly.
control of the wheel, you say and do things that when you snap back into your right mind, you're embarrassed. And it's just not being in control of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody chooses to be suicidal.
Mm-mm.
Nobody chooses to be completely debilitated, want to get stuff done, but don't have the energy or the willpower to do it. You're trapped in this mind that is tired.
Nobody chooses for 5 days to not shower, not brush your teeth, not eat because you just can't get out of bed.
And what's also hard too is being a part of a church. I love our church, but or a culture, I should say, a culture where you get married and you have children.
Right.
Multiply and replenish the earth, know? And it's hard when you have this illness that's invisible. You're stable, and all of a sudden people think that you're cured. Well, why not have children now? You're doing better. Like, that's because I'm on medication and I'm doing my homework.
And back to what you said, the people who say they'll always be there for you, they can't always be there for you. Being a mother is a 24/7 job. Eventually they have to go home. Eventually they have their own lives.
Yeah, and that's why being an aunt is so much better. Because, it's a lifelong commitment. Like, are you going to be there for me when I'm burnt out? Are you going to be there to save my child when I am manic and I am in an uproar, so angry that, I don't want to get that angry. I used to be so angry. And in those angry fits, I don't want to say or behave in a way that's going to scar my child. And my sweet husband, he feels like I am capable of doing anything and that I will be far better than I imagine myself to be. And I give him credit. Most of the time he's right on that. But I also have to remind him about the times where I would run out of the house, run down the street, not really having a plan in my mind other than I want to do everyone a favor and just leave this life, set them free, because I was so convinced that they would be better off without me. And I don't understand why they're saying that they want me to be, in their life. I felt I was a burden. I felt I was dragging everyone down. I felt like I was an embarrassment to the family. And anyways.
And then everybody says, well, you don't have to have children. You can adopt.
And then there's the serious consideration of how well can you manage your stress. Right. And when you're bipolar, you have triggers. And everyone's triggers, they're not always all the same. And so for me, a big a big trigger is, one is travel, and then the other just generalized trigger is stress. There's only so much stress that I can handle. If I feel like I don't have my own space that I can own, that I can just like de-stress and wind back down. If I feel like I don't have my own space, it just builds up. And I just, oh my goodness, I don't know. If I were to accidentally get pregnant, like unplanned pregnancy, I would just have to rise up to the challenge. I just don't want to put myself intentionally into that situation.
For me, the biggest thing is if I had a child and I lost it, if I lost custody, I would constantly be wondering, are they being fed? Are they being cared for? Are they being loved? Because so many children in the system fall through the cracks. And that would just send my anxiety into orbit, probably for the rest of my life, until I knew, if I ever knew, that they were okay.
That would be a miracle if you could like get back to level ground, if that were to happen to you, because I agree with you. It's one thing that is always been a challenge that I've seen for you is the anxiety. Just
Now, keep in mind, we're not faulting anyone with a mental illness who has a child.
Yeah, if you are doing it, and I know, like, I've done obsessively, research on, I read the books, read the articles, and those cases can be just from a doctor's perspective, but in support groups, I've talked to hundreds of women, and many of them say that if they had it all to do over again and choosing to have children, they would. But the far the majority of women who I've talked to have said that they love their children, but if they could do it all over again in choosing, they wouldn't. They wouldn't get pregnant. They said it was the most horrible experience of their life, and they love their children, but it's been a huge struggle, and so that's another.
But again, if you have a mental illness and you've chosen to have children, kudos to you.
Yeah.
You've done something that I can't do.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to say it.
And this is just my decision. This is just Becky's decision.
And it's not easy. I cry about it all the time.
Too.
I get sad. I have dreams of like nursing my baby. Before I found out that I was bipolar, that's all I could dream about and think about is having babies. Like, ever since I was a teenager, I started to collect things for my future baby. I have, even my house today, I have a whole room filled with my old childhood toys, my childhood crib, like my cradle that my mom had me in. And I brought those for my nieces. But I also brought them out thinking that my own children would play with those too. And so I'm not just dismissing like, oh, it's too hard. I'm not going to have a baby because it's too hard. I'm not having a baby to save my baby's life and to save my own. And I don't want to leave the whole responsibility to my husband. I have to remind my husband that like, I could end up, dying, because you've seen me suicidal before.
I have.
Well, and I said that to my husband, to Clark, so.
Or the horrible thing, there is the statistics, bipolar parents have killed their children.
Yeah.
In psychosis.
Yes, and I have been in psychosis before where you're just not in your right mind. I haven't been like, wanting to kill anybody kind of psychosis, but I have not been in my right mind.
And when the baby just won't stop crying or won't stop screaming.
Yeah.
And you just want 5 minutes of quiet.
And there's different kinds of abuse. There's physical abuse and there's verbal abuse. And I have been very, very angry multiple times in my life, and I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to behave that way, especially to a young, impressionable child. So, long story short, it's been very well thought through. I have to circle back and remind myself of why I have chosen not to have kids, because in whatever mood I'm in, I often go there in my mind again thinking, reconsidering, could I do it? And no, I just can't. I can't. Thankfully, I have very supportive parents. It's my siblings who keep trying to, encourage me. Not all the time. And as time goes on, less and less times, my in-laws and my own siblings, they've kind of let it go. I had to be very clear to my mother-in-law, and I'm sure she's passed on the words to, my sister and brother, my sister-in-laws, but that I've had to explain to her that I have been suicidal, and these are the ways that I tried, briefly touching on it, not in detail. But, yeah, and I think that clarified. Because it's all good intentions. Everybody just wants to say, you can do it, Becky, you can do it. But no. Anyways, you guys, I know I tend to ramble on, but can you guys relate? And if so, comment. If you have any thoughts or questions or opinions, comment.
If you like this video, please subscribe.
And give a like.
Like the video. And if you want to, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to hit 100 subscribers. That's my goal by the end of May.
That would be awesome.
And I guess that's all. So thank you for watching, and have a great night and a great rest of your weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.